Let's discover what's the key to a cleaner destiny. Let's talk biomass today.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into something a lot of you have been asking about, biomass energy. We got a ton of source material on this one, and let me tell you, at first, it sounded almost too good to be true.
Yeah, it can definitely seem that way. There's a lot of info out there, and not all of it paints the full picture.
Exactly. So we're going to break it down, see what's really going on, separate the green energy from the greenwashing.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so to kick things off, this source dives right into talking about biomass pellets, calling them, and this is a quote, tiny compressed nuggets packed with energy. I mean, I get the basic idea, but using stuff like garden waste for power seems kind of wild.
Well, the source makes it sound pretty simple, right? Like you can just sweep up your yard waste and suddenly you're powering your house.
Yeah, like magic.
But in reality, it's a bit more complicated than that. It's true that biomass pellets can be made from a wide range of materials, from wood scraps to agricultural residues, even dedicated energy crops. The thing is, the environmental impact, well, it really depends on what's actually being used and how sustainably it's sourced.
That makes sense. So using actual wood scraps, that's probably better than like chopping down a bunch of trees just to make pellets, right?
Exactly. Using waste products that might otherwise decompose and release methane, that's generally seen as a positive. But if sourcing biomass leads to deforestation, then it kind of defeats the purpose of being a renewable energy source.
Right. So there are definitely some gray areas here. And speaking of gray areas, the source really pushes this idea of biomass being carbon neutral because it's part of this natural cycle. But that feels a little simplified, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's one of the trickiest parts of the whole biomass equation. It's true that plants absorb carbon dioxide as they grow and then release it when they're burned. So in that very basic sense, it's a closed loop. However,
there's always a however.
Exactly. The source kind of glosses over the emissions created during the entire process of making, transporting, and, well, actually burning those pellets. One study we looked at found that even if you consider the pellet itself carbon neutral, getting it from where it's harvested to where it's ultimately burned, that can be responsible for up to 20% of the emissions you'd get from just using fossil fuels.
Wow, 20%. That's a lot higher than I would guessed.
It's significant, and it really highlights why we need to look at the whole life cycle of biomass energy, not just focus on that final burn.
Okay, so environmentally speaking, it's more complex than it might seem at first. But what about the economics of it all? The source talks about job creation as a major, plus things like collection, processing, even distribution. Are those claims legit?
Oh, absolutely. The whole biomass industry, it creates jobs across a wide range of sectors. And it's not just those entry-level positions either. The source talks about new equipment being developed specifically for processing biomass. This means skilled manufacturing jobs, research and development, even installation and maintenance down the line.
So it's a whole ecosystem, not just a few jobs here and there.
Right, exactly. It has the potential to create a whole new sector of jobs, which is a big deal, especially in rural areas where a lot of this biomass is harvested.
Okay, so even if the environmental impact is, let's say, debatable, there's a definite economic incentive to make this work.
For sure. And it's not just about the number of jobs, but also the types of jobs being created. Skilled labor, technical expertise, those can really benefit communities. But again,
I know where you're going with this. It has
Yeah.
to be sustainable, right? We can't just create jobs at the expense of the environment.
Exactly. We can't just repeat the mistakes of the past. And that's where innovation comes in, which thankfully the source does acknowledge. They highlighted some really interesting developments in burner and stove technology, all aimed at increasing efficiency and reducing those emissions we were talking about. What are your thoughts on that?
I gotta say, as a bit of a tech nerd myself, I'm always excited to see new technology being applied to old problems. But is it enough? Can we really innovate our way out of the sustainability concerns we've been discussing?
It's a good question. I think technology is a critical piece of the puzzle, but it's not a magic bullet. For example, a more efficient burner means you need less biomass to generate the same amount of heat, which could reduce the pressure to harvest more and more. But even the most high-tech stove can't change where that biomass comes from in the first place, right?
True. So we're back to needing sustainable forestry and agricultural practices, no matter how efficient the technology gets.
Exactly. It has to be a holistic approach, from the way we manage our forests to the efficiency of our energy systems.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground here today. From those tiny compressed nuggets to complex carbon cycles, job creation, and the role of innovation. It's clear that biomass energy has potential, but it's not a simple yes or no answer. So here's a question for all of you listening. What factors would you consider before supporting biomass energy in your own community? What questions would you need answered? It's something to think about, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.